Welcome to The Voice of Retail. I'm Michael LeBlanc, your host. The Voice of Retail is produced in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada and is presented by Hale, a performance marketing partner trusted by brands like ASICS, Sage, and Orange Theory to scale with focus and impact. Malin and Jon, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you both doing? Malin, where are we finding you today?
I am in Stockholm, in Sweden, and great to be with you.
Fantastic. You know, I have the feeling that we met at a conference at something before. Your voice sounds very familiar.
Yes.
I think
we met during NRF in New York.
I think so, because there's not many of us there, so it's always very easy to run into each other. So that makes a lot of sense. Jon, welcome. Where are we finding you?
I'm in a small village north of London in a thatched cottage.
Wow. I don't get that answer very often. Well, wonderful. Well, welcome to both of you. International, of course, I'm here in Toronto, and we had help from New York making this happen. So listen, it's great to have you both on the mic. It's not the first time that leaders, thought leaders and research leaders have been on the mic from EY, but you're both new to the podcast. So Malin, you said, tell us a little bit about what you do, just the high notes and how long you've been with the firm.
Absolutely. So I am the global retail sector leader within EY. Been 19 years with the firm, and in practice, I make sure that we build the right capabilities to support our clients in the retail sector, and set our strategy in how to do that in the best way, and make sure we grow together with our clients.
And it's a global remit, yeah. You spend a fair bit of time on the road. You travel the world, yeah. Is there any everywhere? Asia, Europe, North America, EMEIA. Is your remit that global?
Yes, it's global, but of course we have a lot of expertise and regional leads as well. Sure, so we're working very closely together with them.
As capable as you are, you can't be everywhere at the same time. So you haven't mastered omnipotence yet, but I'm sure EY is working on that for everybody. Jon, what about yourself? What's your background and what do you do?
So I'm the lead retail analyst for EY Insights globally. So that means that I help write a lot of our thought leadership. I compose a lot of our thinking. I do a lot of trend spotting. A lot of the work I do really is around our future gazing program. So thinking about what the future of retail might look like, where retail might go, how consumers are changing. There's a running joke at EY that I've only ever really worked on programs with the word future in the title since I joined. But I've been here for 7 years. And before that, I worked actually doing a very similar role at The Economist Intelligence Unit for a long time.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Malin, this is the 15th edition of the Future Consumer Index, and just for the listeners, they would have heard a little bit about the report before. Could you spend just a minute about the scope and scale of the report itself, what it covers, what markets it covers, and how you the tradecraft behind it, how you gather the data?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually started to run Future Consumer Index just after COVID. So back then we had 5,000 consumers in the survey and 5 markets. But today we are covering 20,000 consumers across 27 countries. So it's truly a global study. And of course, the types of questions we've been focusing on during these years have varied from more consumer choices in terms of how COVID was impacting them to now being more focused on AI, how important are brands to the consumers, what do they think about private label, what channels do they shop through, and so forth. So it's with this, we are able to track the change over time, but more importantly also to see how consumers are intending to change their behaviors going forward. So that's really helping us in the way we support our clients to shape their strategies in the end.
Right. It's actually one of my favorite things about the study that you vary the themes, of course, as you described during the COVID era or during AI or whatever going now. But at the same time, it's longitudinal. So you have a nice long view of customers. And just to be clear, Canadian consumers are in that mix somewhere. So we can do some extrapolation for a Canadian consumer, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So that's what we're doing. We can look at a global perspective, but then we can also dig down into specific countries or regions to get more granular data on different topics and on the consumers. So we are continuously sort of developing how we are doing this. So there will be also changes going forward to make it even more interesting. So this is really core to us.
Let's jump into some of the report itself, Malin. I mean, we see that there's strong growth in e-commerce, even though I would argue that growth is really narrow between a handful of retailers. But what's not common amongst, or what is more common amongst retailers, is physical stores. The growth of physical stores. I read it all the time. I mean, I just read IKEA has just bought the property where I don't know, you've been to New York, of course, the Nike Experience store in Soho. They just bought that property. I mean, that's a big investment. So clearly stores matter, continue to matter. What criteria is it when retailers, or what do you discover when retailers are thinking about, their stores, opening, closing, and trying to make them more productive versus stores as it's been described, stores as media? It's kind of a lot of potpourri of a question. But how do you? What's your perspective about retailers and how they think about stores, or how they should think about stores?
Very relevant and good question, I have to say. We've been talking about omnichannel for many years, but very few retailers have actually truly changed the way that they measure the performance of the stores. We are doing some projects really looking into that now. How can you measure those store performances more from an omnichannel perspective? So it's not only about revenue per square meter, it's more about the contribution of that store or that channel to the whole ecosystem. So more interesting to look at measures that could capture how well does the store, for instance, capture new customers? How much do the customers engage with that channel or that store? And how does that really impact the customer lifetime value in the end? Yeah, it's still a lot of retailers are sort of continuing to measure in the old-fashioned way, but we see a lot of initiatives moving that to a more omnichannel perspective.
Jon, let's follow up on that. I was on the stage 2 weeks ago in Vancouver with the founder of Brian Hill, the founder of Aritzia, and we talked a lot about stores. And he's and they, as an organization, have made a big push into the U.S. One of the few Canadian retailers that have successfully expanded, and he talked about stores as a new customer acquisition model. But it was a big focus for them, also having just beautiful stores in highline cities. Talk about. Are you seeing any trends or category thresholds or decisions that retailers are making about expansion and contraction that tip the balances between reinvestment?
Yeah, so I think there's two sides to the coin, right? When you look at a store, you might see it as being underperforming. You might see that some stores might not have the footfall or the profitability that they drive, and it's really hard when you're a retailer to make that business case to keep a store open. And so we know that as many stores are closing as are opening, and sometimes more in many markets. But I think one thing that retailers need to do, and many are doing, is really flipping the switch on this and thinking, okay, so if a store isn't creating value in one area of my business, there's still potential opportunity for it to create value in other areas of my business. So if you think about stores shifting from delivering kind of just selling products and just holding stock to what they can do as dark stores, serving e-commerce, to what they can do in terms of creating a halo effect, if it's a flagship for the brand, for the retail brand, or for how they might serve communities, distinct communities. I think that there's a lot there. The interesting thing is that I think in terms of store openings and store closures, lots of it is really about location and category. So if the store is in a good location and it's selling relevant categories of products and services into the market, it's likely that store has a fairly good runway to last out. But equally, if a store is underperforming and it's not achieving that in those areas, then the question is much more about why it's underperforming and actually what you can do to reverse that. I've been to retailers from the same retail chain in different locations, and one store is thriving and the other store is absolutely on its knees, and it's very difficult to work out why that is. But I think cracking that is probably a much better thing for retailers to think about than just sort of embarking on a relatively blind opening and closure strategy based on fairly kind of standard metrics.
Yeah. Well, we've certainly seen some of that on both sides, both in the U.S. and Canada, with Hudson's Bay closing. They couldn't get better real estate, right? They're in some of the best malls in the country. Nordstrom as well left Canada for the same reason. Target's struggling, as you said. Store by store next to each other have different performance levels. How do you think, Jon, about different ways in which they're starting to shift and recreate the store in what it does, whether it's fulfillment, whether it's hub, whether it does reimagine, so to speak. It's a big word, or a simple word, but it's a big word. So what do you hear and what do you see?
So the interesting thing is it really does depend on location. Location is key, and there's a big difference between what thrives kind of a successful repurposing or repositioning of a store in a rural location compared to an urban location. So one of the running jokes that I have is that people talk about the future of retail. They often talk about these super apps and Chinese commerce and how that integrated is going to be deliver the future of retail. Yeah. But here in the UK, if you go to the Outer Hebrides in Scotland, which is one of the most remote parts of the country, you can see stores that are actually completely embedded in their local communities. They're community owned, they're community run, and that means that they actually do lots of other things. So they might be museums, they might be coffee shops, they might be cafes or restaurants. They host live music, they host events, and that makes them essential to those communities, and that enables them to be profitably run at that level. Flip it into urban centres, and suddenly it's all around experiential flagships. How you can really create that experience for consumers going in, how you can differentiate it to drive that footfall that is going to be walking down the street anyway, because urban centres do get a lot of footfall still. There is a pitfall to this, though, and I think that one of the challenges is that retailers tend to be quite impatient. They're judged quarter to quarter on revenues and profitability, and a lot of these kind of innovations that you can have to repurpose or think about new business models within your store, they've actually got a very long time to bed in. They need time to settle in. So, for example, retail media, a very hot topic these days, that has actually been around for decades, but it's only in the last few years that we've really seen it hit that tipping point. And if you think about things like, repair services or rental services, they're on the same trajectory, that they're moving quite slowly and iteratively at the moment. Maybe they aren't scaling as quickly as retailers want them to, but perhaps in 5 or even 10 years' time, there might actually be a compelling reason for people to visit a store rather than just buying products.
Right. Malin, Jon hints on something about experience stores versus, I describe it as experience versus efficiency. And we know that there's if not a paradox, there's a tension between those two things in stores. Even the best experience store, and Brian Hill from Aritzia said this, even the best experience store, if people have to wait in line a second too long, they lose their minds. I mean, so you've got this tension between, I go there to get things done, of course, e-commerce being very good at that, and not every store can be an experience store, or every store shouldn't be the store that removes every essence of friction. So how do you square that circle? How do you take those two shopper intentions and build and think about a single physical store?
I think you're spot on. And as you said, you really need to understand what type of customer and what do they expect when they go to that specific store. If you take convenience, for instance, most of the consumers would want sort of a seamless, quick experience. But other types of stores, take home improvement, for instance, you might have two types of customers. Some that want to buy something quickly, a tool or anything to repair something at home, whereas others might want the inspiration. So to strike that balance, depending on how your customer segment look like. for that specific store, and the concept is definitely crucial. A quick checkout would obviously be good for the ones that want the more sort of frictionless experience. And that you can combine with having experts on the shop floor that can inspire the consumers when it comes to decorating your home, for instance. So it's all into the details and making sure you understand the consumer in the end.
I was thinking about this question as I'm planning a store tour in January, as I often do at the NRF show. We were talking about the NRF show on mic where we met, and we're going to go to the Printemps store, which is the epitome of, experience, and you could get lost in that store literally. So it really is making a statement. Jon, let's pivot. You mentioned retail media. Let's talk about retail media for a bit. I mean, it's really the purview of mostly just the biggest retailers. So I don't want to dwell on it too much. But when you think about, as you said, it's not new. But talk about the role of taking it into the physical store. It's mostly been online where it's making most of the revenue. But what's the role of it in physical stores?
I think it's got a pivotal role to play in physical stores. I think that there's a key element here, which is that consumers carry a lot of data around with them, in loyalty apps or smartphone apps that they can use in stores very easily. So I think that plus facial recognition and other in-store technologies like cameras and signage and footfall tracking and store analytics. All of those things can really help turbocharge retail media and enable actually in-store personalization. So if you think about creating digital screens that are relatively interactive that can speak to different consumer needs, and if you think about the information that they can provide with sales assistants in stores and store associates to help provide that sales uplift. I mean, there's obviously work that we've been doing that looks into that as well, and is delivering in pilots some sales uplifts. So I think that there's definitely a lot of value that can be got from customers in store. Don't forget, when a customer is in your store, they actually are a hostage to whatever media you present to them, and that means that you can provide them with a fantastic experience. You have them for as long as they're in the store, and they'll probably spend more time in store than they might spend browsing quickly through websites. So I think that not only the ability to gather data, but the ability to target them is much stronger. And I think loyalty schemes come into that very heavily. If you can turn your loyalty scheme into something that is really compelling, then retail media has a really strong position in the store to actually deliver that extra revenue stream for brands, for retailers from brands as well.
We'll be right back after these messages. The Voice of Retail is brought to you by Hale, the partner behind some of the fastest growing DTC and retail brands in North America. Hale is recognized for senior teams who cut out the noise and keep their focus on what matters most: growth. Their approach is based on outcomes, not hours. They are selective with who they partner with, bringing speed, accountability, and a clear strategy to every engagement. Paid media, content, performance, all of it connects directly to real results. That's why brands like A6 Sage and Orange Theory choose Hale to help them scale. Learn more at wearehale.com. Now, this all sounds great on a retail podcast with two experts in the retail industry, but is this what the consumer wants? I mean, sometimes I feel like retail media tips over the edge and it becomes the tail wagging the dog, if I can use that they'd rather sell an ad than rather sell a good online, and it impacts the customer experience. How do customers think about screens that recognize them and smart carts and these things? I mean, is there a tipping point there where customer experience is trumped and the sales loses and or sales wins, but eventually it's going to lose?
Yeah, I think it's a very delicate balancing act. I mean, so interestingly, facial recognition and interactive screens were rolled out by a retailer in the UK over a decade ago. And at the time, there was a big consumer backlash, and they quietly went away, or actually quite loudly went away, to be honest. It wasn't a particularly pleasant experience for the retailer, I imagine. But I think now, consumers have kind of become more digitally native, more digitally aware, and they're much more willing to kind of be engaged with these tools. And we've seen that with the work that we've done on the Future Consumer Index, where actually consumers are actually willing to use things like in-store AIs or or e-commerce AIs to help elevate their shopping experience. But
or have they given up, Jon? Have consumers just given up? Like, there's no way to protect my data. Everybody gets hacked. You and I and all of us get a lot of, text because our data is on the black web. Have consumers just given up caring? I
think consumers have become definitely like more inured to it. They've just got used to it. Once upon a time, it might have caused them a lot of headache or heartache, and now they just don't even think about it. And that's just natural progress of any new technology that comes in, and then people are initially concerned about it, and then they just get on with it. But the crucial thing here is that consumers will only really do this if they can see or feel some value being delivered back to them.
Right.
So there's a big element where, okay, if the algorithms are helping them, then if in-store targeting is delivering value back to them through targeted promotions or knowing what they want or making their shopping experience easier, then they'll go along with it. But as soon as it becomes something that adds a degree of friction to them, adds to their wait time, distracts them, causes a problem, that's when they start to switch off, and that's when they start to not use it. One of my bugbears personally is that often when I buy certain products online, I will immediately get a recommendation for the same product, and I'm like,
more of the same.
I've just bought that product. Why are you targeting me to sell me the same product? So I think that retailers definitely have, it's not a clear way forward for a retailer. There will always be algorithmic issues and factors like that will come in, but it will get better and better and better. Yeah. And at some point it will become much more invisible, much more smooth, and consumers and retailers will both benefit from it.
Yeah, I thought we'd be farther ahead. I've been working on this for 20 years. I thought we'd be way farther ahead than we are today. It's funny, right? Table stakes versus differentiators,
I completely agree. I think that there is an element, but things keep moving faster. So we're in a situation where, 3 or 4 years ago, everyone was talking about the metaverse. Now they're talking about generative and then quickly agentic.
The metaverse. That was the funniest one. But I know you guys didn't push the metaverse to your clients. So I think you guys are on the right side of the law there. Malin, let's shift gears. Let's talk about sustainability. There's a sustainability conference coming up in Canada. It tends to be more now a technical discussion. There's always been a discussion whether affordability trumps sustainability. We see the fastest rising. I always point to the obvious thing that the fastest growing retailers are the farthest thing from being sustainable. So does it matter anymore?
Yes, and I think it's a pitfall to think that sustainability is and profitability that it can't go together. There's lots of things you can do to both drive cost savings and be more sustainable. Just reducing waste throughout your supply chain, improve your inventory management. Also, the way the product in itself, if you look at a grocery retail, for instance, we see a lot of substitution of meat to vegetables, and that's not only more sustainable and healthier, it's also more cost efficient in the end. You need to find that balance of profitability and sustainability in order for it to scale.
But from the report, do the consumers still care? Will they still make a decision? Is it a tiebreaker that one corporation cares more, one retailer cares more about sustainability than the other?
Yeah, there's still a disconnect with what consumers say and how they act. So even if everyone, or not everyone, but many consumers put sustainability very high on their priorities, they are still not willing to pay more for it. So that's the.
Just to add to this, in a previous iteration of the Future Consumer Index, we asked consumers about the actions that they would take to be more sustainable, and that they obviously promised the earth because they were doing a survey rather than in a shop buying. Right. But there are around 50% who said they would pay more for sustainably produced goods. But interestingly, that number rose to something like 70 to 80% when they felt that retailers and organizations and governments should take responsibility. So interestingly, there's an element here where retailers feel that they're following the consumer and they need to follow the consumer. But in this case, it feels like retailers, with the scale that they've got and the ability to deliver things like, recycling programs or take back schemes, etc., they actually have the ability to shift the needle and take a lead. But I do take your point about, these fast-growing companies that aren't seen as being particularly sustainable in the market are growing. But that's because, effectively, that their price promise is so significantly lower. That's a big needle shifter in the market. It's
and their business
literally
process, right? Their business process is very different, right? They make on demand, exactly. and so there's an argument to be made that they waste less because they don't manufacture to inventory demand forecasts. They make to the market. So, all right. So we've been on together. What is it? Almost 20 minutes, more than 20 minutes. We haven't really talked about AI yet. Some kind of record, I think. Can't spell retail without talking about AI. So, Malin, I wanted to talk about, I was interviewing Seth Godin for Remarkable Retail, and he made the point that, if all retailers adopt as they are AI for efficiency, then it's just a race to the bottom. Like, that isn't going to be a differentiator. Consumers are now adopting AI. How are you and what are consumers thinking about AI? I've seen some remarkable research that the consumers are placing inordinate amounts of trust in AI, and retailers need to really pay attention. What's your perspective and what are you hearing?
Definitely, and I would also say that when it comes to sort of increasing customer loyalty and drive growth through using more AI, you can almost argue both ways here in terms of the customer loyalty. So, of course, when everyone has that, all the retailers have that, is that enough then to differentiate yourself? It's going to be important now to sort of be in the lead, and you might sort of grow more than your competitors in the short run. But in the long run, will that be enough to be competitive? Right. Or is the human aspect even more important then? So I think there's you can argue both ways in terms of how AI is going to help drive that growth.
Yeah, 100%. Let's skip ahead. I want to do a lightning round question for each of you, or just jump right in, and let's just really kind of quick 20-second answers. Physical stores in 5 years, more, fewer, or just different?
Me, I would say fewer but different.
Malin, what's the most overrated retail technology in stores right now?
The metaverse. Maybe retail media then. It's very hyped right now, that's for sure.
Very hyped right now. All right. Let's flip that coin. Jon, let's start with you. Is there an underrated or overlooked innovation? Maybe Malin, it was RFID, but is there something there that retailers should be piloting? I think about smart carts. I think about, all kinds of things we've talked about during the episode. Anything that come to your mind is like, if you're going to do this one thing, you got to get going on this technology.
I think in the longer term, it would be something like augmented reality. I think there's been a lot of pilots, a lot of hype. That hype's fallen away. But I think actually, going forward, the ability for retailers to kind of like use AR overlays in stores for signage, direction, product augmentation, promotions, dynamic pricing. I think that there's something there. I just think that it's not here yet. And I think that there may be a tipping point, but I think it's more likely to be iterative. And, in 5 or 10 years' time, we won't even be thinking about it.
Malin, what do you make of the sole live streaming? You mentioned what works, and it's the classic. It worked in Asia. Lots of folks are buying on live streaming, but it's never really. Well, it's come to North America, it's come to Europe, but it's really never blossomed in the way that many thought it would. Do you think there's hope or a future for live streaming and interactive kind of shopping and TikTok shopping and all that stuff?
Yes, definitely. I think so, and that's something that's picking up. I mean, depends on what products and what categories, of course. Sure. Sort of the influencers' impact on the consumers has only increased over the last couple of years. So,
right.
So yes.
That's a good index. I feel it's going to be like the TikTok shops that breaks it open, or the Instagram Reels shops, really, that kind of breaks it open. Do you agree? Like, you need a platform for it, like a vector to deliver it. Does that make sense? Jon, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think a lot of retailers are looking at making those alliances, aren't they? And they're seeing a huge amount of sales made through social channels. But I think live stream shopping is something that actually doesn't have to necessarily even be delivered only through digital channels. I think if you were to host it in stores as well, you would probably find that you would get something similar. And I can envisage a future where, if you think about the physical channel, bringing influencers in store to demonstrate products and shows in ways that they usually only do at large events, that would be something that would also deliver a little bit of kudos and brand value back to a retailer, especially amongst younger consumers.
Fantastic. Well, Malin and Jon, it took us a while to get on the mic together, but it's certainly worth it. It's great listening to both of you. You got so much insight, both from the consumer report and from the clients. And Malin, where do folks get a hold of you? They want to get a hold of you? LinkedIn, email, and where can they get the report?
All of the above, I would say. Please reach out if you want the report. We will, of course, share that.
Well, fantastic. Anyway, listen, thank you both for joining me on the Voice of Retail podcast. A real treat to chat and to get reacquainted. And I don't think it's going to last time we have a chat. I mean, we could really, I think the three of us could chat for like an hour and a half straight about all these things, because there's so much interesting going on in this industry that we all love. So once again, thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, follow on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically each week. And be sure and check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast with Steve Dennis and the Global E-Commerce Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, Senior Retail Advisor, Keynote Speaker. If you want more content or chat, follow me on LinkedIn. Safe travels, everyone.